Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who is one of the stars of the classic sitcom Growing Pains. He's also been fortunate enough to voice Linus for the beloved Peanuts movies. He co-authored the book When I Wished Upon a Star, From Broken Homes to Mended Hearts. Also a celebrity chef. Please help us welcome Jeremy Miller. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Good to see you, buddy. Oh,
it's good to see you too, brother.
Speaking of your book, boom. We were probably at an event, started talking about your book, and that night I went home and I bought it and I read it, and it's fantastic.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. We were really proud of putting that out.
You should be proud, man.
Thank you. It was, getting to tell our stories was really important to Brandon and I. Brandon was my co-author and one of my very dear friends. And it took us about 4.5 years to get it from, the idea of maybe we should do this to getting it in print. But it was very well worth it. I've had many people who've reached out and, sharing my struggle and my stories. They reach out and, would like some help getting sober or would like some help with something they're dealing with. It's just, that's the reason we put the book out was, if we could help anybody by telling our story, then it'd be worth it.
Jonathan, you gotta pick up When I Wished Upon a Star.
I definitely shall do that.
Yeah.
I was reading all about it this week, so yes.
I'll tell you, I know I'm supposed to be plugging me, but my favorite part of our book really is my buddy Brandon's story. Mm-hmm. Part of that, I'm sure, is because I lived my part of it, but his story is just so fascinating.
Later, but can you share with us now? Then, as long as we're talking about it, can you share about the book now? What it entails?
Absolutely, it's really a dual biography. My very dear friend Brandon was a wish kid. He was born with a heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot, and was not expected to live to see 20 years old. Yeah. And he was granted a wish by the Starlight Foundation when they still granted wishes. And his wish was to come to the set to meet me. I mean, out of everything he could have had, he wanted to come meet Ben Seaver because he came from a broken home. His father left on his 5th birthday, abandoned him. He basically, his sister and him raised themselves. His older sister looked after him, but his mom was a, prison guard and worked 2 jobs or another job as well, beyond that one, just to keep the family afloat. And, he grew up knowing he wasn't going to live to see 20. And it was a big struggle for him. When he came to meet me, and getting to come to Hollywood, meet his favorite celebrity, getting to, he's a small town kid from Nowheresville, Louisiana. I mean, a small town called Trout, Louisiana, just outside of Gina. It's a, one stop sign town. And I mean, that's where he grew up, and getting to come to Hollywood and do all these amazing things. It made him realize that maybe there is more out there for him.
Yeah.
And he set his mind right then and there that he was going to become a doctor. Oh, wow. He wanted to become a cardiologist, helping treat children who have the same problems that he had. And he had a procedure done that was totally cutting edge at the time that ended up saving his life. And this procedure has become so commonplace that his defect has been taken off the terminal list. It's no longer considered a terminal defect. So he's doing amazing. He's just a couple years younger than me. So he's, mid-40s and a pediatric cardiologist treating children who have the same types of problems he grew up with. So it's just, his story is amazing. He fought through all the physical issues, learning disabilities, everything else to achieve that dream. So I get such a kick out of reading his story.
That's awesome, man.
And what about your own portion in there?
Well, the weird thing about it, and it's what made us want to write the book, is that me, Hollywood kid growing up in LA, him growing up in small town Louisiana, our lives paralleled each other in very weird ways. Both of us came from broken homes. Both of our fathers had left young. Um, it just, we fought a lot of the same demons, learning disabilities, different things like that. So we decided to tell the story. It almost goes back and forth chapter to chapter. Not every chapter, sometimes it's two in a row, but it'll go his story and then it'll come back to me and what I was dealing with at that exact same time. So it gets into a lot of, the trials and tribulations of being a child actor. For the most part, you'll see if you read it that I had a real good experience with the Hollywood side of it. But I get into a lot of the other negatives, my stepfather, the abuse that me and my family went through with that. I laid everything bare. There is nothing there, there's nothing still in the closet. You know what I'm saying? We laid everything out, and even managed to get a lot of things through the lawyers. So
it's a difficult enough hill to get over for anybody being a child actor, because there's not a handbook for how to then become an adult, through the entertainment industry.
exactly.
But everything else you also accomplished. There's just one victory after another, and you're one of the most grounded, real people. You and Joni, like, I always gravitate towards you guys if you notice.
Same, same to you, brother.
You guys, not Jeremy, because he knows this. This made me want to just like drive over to Jeremy and give him a hug when I read this. So he was 4 years old. He was drinking.
Man.
And I remember something about the book about like when the adults would have a party, it was either during or after the party, he would like find little like left cocktails,
Yep.
with a little bit and like.
Well, and it was such a different time because my grandparents and my family always told that story as kind of a, joking, laughing, oh, this was funny kind of a thing. But no, I would often run around after grandma and grandpa's parties and kind of finish off the beers. And, I kind of kept doing that until I came across a butt can one day. That cured me of that real quick. But yeah, what 4-year-old goes around doing that and doesn't after the first sip go, ew, nasty, and put it away?
Wow.
I didn't. And again, there's my grandmother always said it was around 4.5. My mom says it's around 6.5. Either way, it's still way too damn young.
You think? To Jeremy's defense, everyone, he did have a fake ID at that time. So,
well, it really goes to illustrate how different people who are. It's one of the reasons I always believed in the genetic component of addiction. That's not normal for a kid to do that.
mm-hmm.
And it's not like I continued drinking continuously from, childhood on,
Right.
but every time there was an opportunity to get a hold of alcohol and to drink, even at a young age, it was always to excess.
Yeah.
The first real crazy partying thing I can remember, I was barely 10 years old. I was like 10 or 11 years old. No, maybe 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Manhattan Beach with one of the producer's nephews. He owned a big volleyball wear company back when beach volleyball in the 80s was really booming. Mm-hmm. And he had backstage to all the volleyball matches. So we went down and spent the weekend for the volleyball championships. And I started drinking everybody had cases of beer and everything else. And I started drinking in the morning when we got out there and didn't stop until, basically I was staggering passed out drunk that night, and that's at 12 years old. I mean, we spent the day on the beach drinking and watching all the volleyball. And then we went to all these parties up and down the strip because people just leave their homes open during the volleyball thing and throw these massive, almost like block parties.
Yeah.
So I'm in somebody's house I don't even know, drinking beer like a fish. And of course, now's the time I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. I'm going to be sick. I go run into the bathroom. There's a line of maybe 20 people for the bathroom. So I go running into this poor guy's, kitchen, and I throw up in his sink. And then at 12 years old, turned around, went back immediately to the cooler and got more beer. So, even at 12, I had no off switch.
Right.
Once I began, it was game on.
Right. So before we go into your career,
Mhm.
I wanna just bring up I want to bring up a remedy that you found that so people out there if they hear this and they might need help. So I was watching I have the TV on one day few years back, and it was like something Dr. Phil I think it was, or somebody was on, and then there you are, and I'm like, oh, Jeremy, cool. And so Jeremy had this implant put in him. He'll explain it much better than I, that will kill all cravings for alcohol or make you sick if you drink or something like that. He'll explain that. But, and then they had the doctor on, Dr. George. That's my buddy, your doctor. He and I have been playing softball on the same team for years. He drops his shoulder on his swing and he should hit the cutoff man a little bit better, but he's a great doctor.
Love Doc.
And the most handsome guy in the league,
Oh God, nobody wants to be around him. It's just
don't stand near him.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway, would you mind explaining a little bit about that remedy that he helped you with, and then I know people want to know about all the other things. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a medically assisted recovery treatment, and it uses the same medicine that they use in naloxone, the sprays that stop an opiate overdose. The medicine's called naltrexone, and it actually, for opiates, it blocks your body's ability to absorb the opiates. But it also works on the same part of the brain as our alcohol receptors. So it's just at the time I had it done, it was a small biodegradable pill. It was just pure medicine. They made a small incision in my lower abdomen and inserted it there into the fatty tissue. And it just dissolves over the course of about 6 months and helps to block those cravings. Now, for me, it works differently for everybody. I actually worked with the clinic for about 3 years. I worked at the clinic as a patient advocate. So I got to see how it worked for many different patients. And some patients were exactly like me. It was like someone flicked off the light switch. I mean, it was that drastic. It really was. At that time, when I found that treatment, I had tried everything and I couldn't make anything work. I mean, I had run the gamut. I had done, 12-step. I had done inpatient and outpatient rehab, tons of different types of therapy, hydrotherapies, meditation things, relaxation, just anything anybody threw at me. I kept trying it, and nothing could get me past that craving, that overwhelming need where I'm sitting in the parking lot of the liquor store, screaming at myself, don't do it. You don't want this. You know where this is going to go. And yet that craving was so powerful, I would still get out of the car, go buy that bottle. But at that point, I was struggling so bad. I'm not kidding. I would get back in the car and sit there and damn it, what did I do? And this and that. And sometimes I'd pour the bottle out, start the car, start to drive out, and sure enough, I'd back right back out, pull into the parking spot, go back in and get another bottle. All the while screaming in my head, "What are you doing, you effing idiot?" So getting past that craving was so crucial for me because I could not do it on my own. This treatment really gave me that boost over the hurdle. I tell everybody, it is not a cure. You are still going to have to do the work of recovery, but it is a really great tool at helping to get past that craving. And for some people, it just significantly reduces the craving. But even then, it reduces it enough that you can start hearing the things you need to hear in recovery. You can start healing because you're not being bombarded with that need, that give it.
Hey, congratulations on that, Jeremy. It makes me so happy. I mean, and I hope this reaches somebody who needs to hear it. If it's one person.
Yeah, kudos to you for taking the steps for doing it. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, let's talk about show businessy stuff, like more plasticky, less human things.
Again, I was looking at your thing. I was talking yesterday to Moosie that you started so young. I mean, so at what age do you remember going on casting calls? And I always ask this to people. I'm curious. Was it something you enjoyed doing, or was it just that you were pushed into it, didn't have a say?
I was never pushed. but no 5-year-old knows what he's getting
Right.
into when you get into this. It was really as simple as my mom just saying, hey, what would you think about trying to be like one of those kids on TV? Well, I'm 5. Okay, sure,
Mhm.
that sounds fun. But I fell in love with it. I
Yeah.
really did. I loved the whole process. I even loved auditioning. So I got hooked. Um, I'll give you the other side, though. My little brother, who also acted and him and I auditioned together, and he did a couple movies and guest spots on multiple shows. But around 10 years old, he came to my mom and said, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't,
Mm.
I really want to just enjoy my life as a kid, play ball, play sports, be with my friends. And my mom was like, okay, absolutely. If that's what you want to do, you're all in. But I
Mm.
wanted to stay.
Yeah.
I never wanted to do anything else once I started acting. I loved being in front of the camera. I loved performing. And I just loved the whole process of creating, a project.
Do you remember how
So
long it took you to get your first commercial, and which one was it?
funny enough, I got a McDonald's commercial in my first 10 auditions.
Wow.
First 10 auditions, somewhere in there, I got a McDonald's commercial. And, you know, we had no experience with the business. I mean, no family members, no nothing. We were complete newbies. So we thought, hey, this is easy. And sure enough, I didn't get another job for about 2.5 years after that. Over 400 auditions. I was getting close. That's the thing. It was always down to, the final 4 or the
Hmm.
final 2, but I just never got booked. So it was a hard 2.5 years there because my mom was, working part time and driving us around full time to all of our auditions. We'd leave at 2 o'clock when she'd pick us up from school and do homework in the car while she drove us all around LA and Hollywood and Venice and rinse and repeat every day. So it's difficult. There was a lot of strain and stress on my mom. And it came to a point where she sat me down after an audition one day and said, Jeremy, I don't know how long we're going to be able to keep doing this financially.
Mhm.
This is too much of a strain. I'm not able to work full time. I think we just really need to pray about it. And, I think we really only have another 3 months of this max.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, I don't know if you guys are believers in prayer or not, but both her and I started praying practically every night, just if this is what's supposed to happen, please let something happen. And I swear to you, within 3 weeks, I started booking every last thing I went on, everything. Guest spot
Excellent.
on, you know, uh, Charles in Charge, guest spot on Punky Brewster, guest spot on Different Strokes, guest spot on Pryor's Place, which was Richard Pryor's children's show on
Mhm.
Saturday mornings. Booked a TV movie, booked a feature, then booked Growing Pains. I booked all of those inside of a year and a half. It was thankfully always our choice. Given once contracts were signed, there was no backing out had I changed my mind. But, I
Yeah.
never did. I loved it. I really did fall passionately in love with the business.
Hmm.
So you mentioned Pryor's Place, right? So obviously you
Mhm.
worked with at a young age Richard Pryor, and so Robin Williams was on that show. It's available on YouTube, by the way.
Yep.
Rip
Robin
Taylor,
actually
Marla
did.
Gibbs.
Oh, amazing, amazing actors and actresses. It was really cool. And even as a kid, I knew who all those people were, and I was absolutely amazed to be standing around all of them and working with them. And funny enough, Ron Say, former
Yeah, number
former
10.
Dodger,
Yeah.
was actually a guest star on my episode. So I was such a Dodger fan that I was even more impressed he was there than Richard and Robin and everybody else. But when I get to look back at it, it was just amazing. I mean, Robin
Yeah.
did this great old miner character, like gold miner, crazy kind of whacked out character that he would do. And Richard actually wasn't acting in our part of it. He was doing all the directing and the producing. He did do some acting on the show, but he wasn't in our episode. So it
Right.
was just amazing. It was an amazing one to get to do. But I mean, like all of the ones I got to do, Punky Brewster was awesome to be on, iconic show that is still remembered incredibly fondly, being a
It was
part
such
of
a
Different
huge show,
Strokes.
Punky Brewster. People don't remember that it was really a big show.
It really was. And, it was something that at least our generation and the newer generation that is discovering it have really connected with, and being a part of Different Strokes was amazing. It also got me a lifelong friendship with Todd Bridges, who's like one of my older brothers. And, I just was very blessed to get to work on a lot of very iconic shows with some amazing talent.
Yeah. So, you mentioned Ron Say from the Dodgers. I was looking it up, Jonathan, and I didn't see any New York Mets get booked for any of those great shows. Anyway, sorry.
Two New York Mets were on Sesame Street, by the way. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. I missed that one.
So I do want to ask, let's talk about Growing Pains now. You mentioned, so what do you remember about the casting process? Because I've read that River Phoenix was up for your role. So I want to know if that was true. And were you aware of anyone else going for that part, for your part?
I actually was not aware of anybody else. It was a bit of a cattle call, as they call it, where they were just calling in tons of kids. I think over the 2 or 3 day process, they brought in close to 300 kids or 200 kids or whatever it was. The only thing I remember about auditioning is I never read any lines. I went in and just started telling jokes and talking to the producers and doing these dolphin imitations I used to do because my voice could get so high, and just basically being a real kid. And the producers to this day have said that that is why I got the part, is because I came in and was able to just be a real kid that they thought people could relate to. So I never even read the lines for Ben. I just went in and started charming them, I guess, and they loved it.
What about the moment? Do you remember, Jeremy, the moment? Because you did a lot of guest spots leading up. You're like, oh, coming back next week. Like, you're a series regular.
It was interesting because going to do the pilot, the very first episode, it's one episode and done. So that was very familiar to me.
Yeah.
You go, you do it, you meet these wonderful people, but then you move on and you have no idea if it'll go anywhere from there. But when we got the call that it was going to become a regular thing, it was, I didn't realize what that meant as a kid until we started doing it, and I started forming the relationships with all of these people, with my cast, with our director, with our crew. And, there's something really magical when you have a great set. And I know you know this, when everybody is clicking and everybody's really right at their peak of their abilities, and everybody gets along and everybody's feeding off of each other. That's really what we had. And it helped me grow as an actor. It helped it feel more normal, more like a family rather than a job. And that consistency, when we came back for the second season, I think that's where it really set in that, oh, wow, we get to keep doing this,
There's chemistry. I mean, you guys look like a family.
I think how close we were, like you said, really did translate to on film. It really did come through, and it made, it made it easier for the fans to connect with us and to feel like they were watching a real family. Weird enough, that's when it was allowed into China in the 90s. We were one of only 2 Western shows allowed into China. They really looked at us like a real American family. In fact, they didn't watch the show like it was a comedy. In their eyes, it was a little slice of Americana, like a little documentary on American family, basically. So I know that our love for each other and our connection and closeness really did translate.
Right.
You said on Pryor's Place that you knew everyone. So I'm just curious, were you familiar with Alan Thicke and Joanna Kearns as well?
Actually, I wasn't. I had actually seen Kirk and Tracy before in different films. They had starred together in Best of Times, which was Robin Williams and Kurt Russell movie. And I had also seen Kirk on another show he had done a couple years before that was like a pilot episode, or had done 3 episodes and didn't go anywhere. So I was familiar with both of them, but no, I had no idea about Alan and Joanna. I'll tell you, not just 2 amazing people who were like other parents to me, but to get to work around someone like Alan, who was so multi-talented, it made me want to aspire to more. You know what I mean? I mean, he's a singer, actor, performer, writer, um, musician, could play, multiple different instruments. He wrote the theme song to Different Strokes. He wrote the theme song to
Yeah.
Facts of Life. He wrote, I believe it was Barry Manilow's first TV special. He wrote all the dialogue and jokes and all that kind of stuff. He was just amazingly talented, and he had this ability to work on 5 or 6 different projects at one time and keep everything perfectly straight in his head. I was in awe watching him. I mean, the back of every script he had, and I'm not kidding, every script he'd get at the beginning of the week, the back of it by midweek was filled with phone numbers of producers and writers and actors and everybody else he had to contact that week about all the other projects he was doing. And
Wow.
he could still somehow do that and give the amazing 100% performance he would give on Growing Pains. So just getting to learn from him for so long was a blessing.
It's funny. We have people come on here that, they talk a lot that that people that I loved growing up, oh, well, he wasn't so nice in real life. So I'm relieved so Alan Thicke was as nice as he seemed.
Absolutely. Alan was one of the most wonderful, generous, loving men I've ever known. In fact, in 40 years of having fans come up and tell me about meeting Alan or meeting the cast, in 40 years, I have had exactly one person say, "Oh, Alan was kind of a jerk to me."
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I asked him, I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, he kind of blew me off in the airport when I wanted to get an autograph." Like, well, everybody can have a bad moment,
Right.
but literally 40 years, that's the one negative thing I have ever heard a fan or someone who worked with him say about the man. So no, he was truly the amazing man that you saw on screen.
Yeah. You can't judge somebody on one moment. You don't know what
Exactly.
somebody, he may have just gotten a phone call that was
Right. Yeah.
taking over his mind and concerning him about something. We just don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you do the pilot for Growing Pains, and there was a
Mhm.
different Carol who
Yes.
played different actors who played Carol, Elizabeth Ward. What was that like? Like, did it give you a feeling like, oh gosh, if it can happen to her, it can happen to anyone? Was it a seamless transition, or
It
what was?
actually was a fairly seamless transition. Not that there was anything against Elizabeth. She was very
Mhm.
sweet. She was a good actress. The producers just felt that after the test runs that they did, the fans weren't connecting. They felt like she was the
Mm,
odd man out,
mhm.
that she didn't, there wasn't the same family chemistry with her that
Yeah,
there was. Yes, I guess at a young age there was that, wow, they got rid of her. Could that happen to me kind of a thing? But I didn't, I mean, I'm a kid. It was a thought, a fleeting thought, and it was gone. I never worried about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And they brought Tracy in. Um, we actually didn't film her scenes in the pilot first. We first met her at a photo shoot, a PR shoot for the first season.
Oh,
And me being the obnoxious punk I was, basically after saying hi, I asked her, we were talking and she said, "Oh yeah, I had to tell him I was a different age to get the part." And I said, "Oh, you should be careful with that. That's why they got rid of the other girl."
Oh God. Were you wait?
She got all
Uh,
freaked out and panicky, but I was just being an obnoxious little brother. I was baptizing her into the family. So
right, right.
it was a seamless transition. Tracy came in, we got along instantly. She fit in with the group immediately, and
Mhm.
then I think it was within a week of that photo shoot, we went on stage on set and began filming the replacement scenes for her.
Oh,
And when
well,
you saw it played back, you could see the difference. You could see that it looked and felt more like a family. And
well,
the funny thing is, Tracy had read, I think they had brought her in 3 different times for that part before they called her again.
oh
And
wow.
she refused. They said, "No, they want you to come back to California and read again." And she said, "Why? They've turned me down 3 times already. I'm not doing it."
Harry refused.
No, Tracy did.
No?
Tracy
Okay,
said,
okay.
Tracy said flat out, I'm not doing it. Harry convinced her, her dad, who was also her agent, convinced her to go back and take the
Oh,
audition.
okay, I didn't know that.
You know, she was very, why they've brought me out 3 times. They've told me they want me, and every time I go out, they say no. So why am I going to go put myself through this again? So thankfully, her father talked her into it because, you know, she was the missing piece.
Yeah.
Well, besides Elizabeth, when I was reading that they also replaced much of the writing staff. So, you know, in partway through the season. So what was the reaction of the cast? And they already replaced an actress. They replaced now the writing staff. So how worried were you about the show surviving?
Not very worried because it wasn't like a full replacement. We still had the same executive producers. We still had the same director for the first season, and it was only about half the writers in that first season that they brought in. So as a kid, you're not really privy to a lot of that. You just see the new faces or whatever. So I wasn't terribly worried about it. And truthfully, I think it made us stronger. Nothing against whoever the writers and the people were originally, but our golden era, when I thought we were at our absolute strength and peak with writing and everything else in the storylines, was really that end of the first season until the fourth season. You know, that 3.5 year period. I really felt we were hitting on all cylinders. So I think it worked out as well as it could.
Yeah, Kevin Abbott came onto that show at some point. I don't
Mhm.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin was a wonderful guy.
You know, he's big time showrunner. He went on from there,
Mhm.
like all kinds of stuff. Very, very talented guy. So I remember seeing you over where you guys did your show. I did an episode of Just the Ten of Us, the spinoff of
Mhm.
Growing Pains. We were right next door. Did you guys do your table read in like a church, like a fake movie church house or a
Yes.
school? Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
this little kind of old school, could be a church, could be a,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
house on the prairie school type thing. But yeah, that's where we would do our cold reads. It was just a nice big wide open square space where we could get the tables in, and we'd leave them up there pretty much all the time because that would be our extra staging area as well when we had extras, so that they had places to
Uh-huh.
sit and tables and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where we did our cold reads. And I always found it really funny because we pile into this little church thing or whatever early in the morning and just start getting as irreverent as possible as we're doing the lines.
Right. What point did you realize? Was there like a moment or a day or a week where you realized that oh, wait, we're on a hit show?
Everybody talked about it,
Hmm.
then every week when the new ratings came out, Alan and Joanna and everybody would grab the
Yeah.
sheet and try and, see where we were and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And we saw the progress. We became a top 10 show midway through the first season.
Hmm.
And we didn't relinquish that spot until they started moving our nights around and moving us off of Tuesday night.
Right.
For those, we were taught with Cosby, Monday Night Football, and us. And I want to say, I can't remember the fourth show, but we were the top 4 for about 2.5, 3 years.
Hmm.
Um, so you saw the success, but I didn't really realize the level of it until I went back to school the first time. After the first season, I went back to school for a couple of months, and it was a new school. And I went out on the playground at lunch that day, and I literally was descended on by the entire school. I had like 1,500 kids literally bull rushed me and start, Jeremy, come play with us. Come do this. Come play hopscotch. Come, play handball. Come do that. And I mean, I couldn't even hear. I mean, I'm being pulled on and it was a real mob scene. And I ended up having to eat lunch in the principal's office for about the first week while people adjusted to the fact that I was there. So that was for me the first time, I'm only 9 years old at that point. And that was when I realized the real popularity of this show and what it might mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in the principal's office for lunch, but for a whole other reason. Yeah.
Different
I
reason.
was sent
that
there
wasn't
for.
until junior high and high school for me.
Yeah, one of the funny things about Growing Pains, fun things, I guess, was also the constant changing of the credits. So, how much fun were those to do? And did anyone comment on it at the time?
Oh, always. People always commented on the different changing of the credits. The favorite of all the fans was, of course, the baby pictures ones.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
were all real baby pictures, real family photos that we all submitted. So the fans really loved that one. That was a fan favorite always. But no, the topic of discussion, the way the song would change on
Right.
certain seasons, the way they, like you said, the credits, the different pictures, it was something that was really talked about by a lot of the fans. So it was something we noticed, and
Different
we could
people
see
left
the effect.
behind always in the last one to go into the house.
Yep.
Right.
No, those were
Well,
those were always fun to do, and we would if the show kind of centered around a certain character, that would be who would be the last one, standing in front of the house and then would
Oh,
walk
that's
in.
cool. I never realized
I
that.
didn't realize that either.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
fantastic. Well, this one's for Moosie now because he made the Ron Say comment before. So I just want to know, as a Mets fan, at the time, did you realize the reasons for the Seavers and Kuzmins in the show?
Oh yeah, I definitely did. I mean, we
Tom
our
Seaver.
creator Neil Marlins was a huge Mets fan.
Yeah.
So it was made very clear to us why, where all the names came from, who it was about, and the little kind of tongue-in-cheek Easter egg he was giving people. So yeah, we were very aware of it, and it made me actually learn more about the Mets. I grew up a huge Dodger fan and didn't really pay
Uh-huh.
attention. I mean, I was a kid, so I didn't pay attention to what the other teams were doing or who they were, but it actually got me interested in the Mets as well. So it was kind of cool. I learned a lot
So
more
there were
about
never any
baseball through
Says
them.
or Garveys in that show. Okay, I just wanted
Nope,
to
nope.
clear that
They
up.
never.
No,
Nope.
no,
It
no.
was,
They
there
they
was
couldn't
no
afford
LA
those guys.
connection. No LA connection.
Like the shows seem to make the news a lot. They were writing about things that I don't think possibly you don't do today, like Tracy Gold's weight. I think they would make
Mhm.
jokes and stuff about that. I don't.
Oh yeah, it was. I still cringe to
Hmm.
this day.
Yeah.
Um, because eating disorders were not understood
Mm.
back then. And nowhere near as well as understood as they are now. And nobody knew that Tracy had had an eating disorder young.
Mm.
She had started battling that at 12 or 11 or 12 years old
Mm.
because in this business is what they do. I mean, they came to her at 10 or 11 years old and told her, "You're too chubby. You need to lose weight if you want to
Yeah.
work." Who does
Wow.
that to a 10-year-old? That's insane. But we didn't know any of this background. So the
Yeah.
writers thought, that they're just writing normal brother sister banter.
Right.
But we made constant jokes about her weight. And it absolutely kills me
Mm.
knowing now that, she was struggling with an eating disorder, that her weight was a very big issue for her. And we were making light of it. We were poking fun at that every chance we got. And, you know,
So,
it's it's one of the more uncomfortable things when I go back and
yeah.
watch the show.
So when it was revealed, when she did reveal that, or that she had, medical issues,
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
what was the reaction of the cast, and I guess more like the writers? Did they like say, "Oh, hey, we better back off on this stuff"?
Oh, absolutely. The problem was nobody really knew for sure. I'm sure some of the adults suspected, but the
Yeah.
only person who was in on it completely, who Tracy had trusted and told, was Joanna.
Mhm.
That is the only person that she had confided in. The producers knew nothing, the writers knew nothing, we knew nothing.
Hmm.
It wasn't until the very last year that the extent of what she was dealing with came to light. And that was only because she was on death's doorstep.
Oh,
Um, it actually, when I became aware, I mean, we knew she was looking thin, but like most people with an eating disorder, she hid it well. She always came to set in, incredibly baggy sweats. She covered it really, really well. So we just didn't know. And
Yeah.
again, this is nothing against Trace, but Trace was always very absent-minded. Maybe a little ADD like me, I don't know. But we were in the changing room, and the guy's side was on one side, the girls' changing area was on the other. And she's changing for a scene, and we're talking about something. And it was a deep conversation. And she comes walking out of the changing room with her top in her hand, and she was just in her bra. And she was a skeleton.
yeah.
And
Oh
she
boy.
saw the look on my face, and she immediately covered up and dove back into the room. But that was the first time I actually became aware of it, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And
Yeah.
I immediately went to, I want to say one of our production assistants, and I said, "What the hell is going on?" And I told them, and things kind of snowballed from there. And that was when our producers basically forced Tracy into treatment. They told her
Yeah.
she would not be welcome back on the show until after she got help because they weren't going to sit there and watch her die.
Yeah.
And so she left the show. I think it was for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and went into the hospital to try and get herself healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a hard time. It was hard. We were very, very worried about her.
Sure.
A lot of guilt, that we were that way, that we treated her that way. I mean, Kirk and I even made jokes like that outside the set,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because just in our normal lives, because again, it was like, to us, it was normal brother sister stuff. I mean, I
Right.
had any of us, the writers, the producers, any of us had even the slightest clue, we never would have made any of those jokes,
Yeah, you just
you
just take
know?
the lesson and apply it to the future and don't beat yourselves up because if you
That's all
had
you can
any
do.
idea at the time, there's no way you would have fed
No.
it. You would have hurt somebody that
Right.
you love and
No,
made
but there
jokes
at
that
the
would.
time there was a lot of guilt.
Mm.
All of us, I'm sure, have made peace with it and learned from it. But at the
Yeah.
time, for lack of a better word, it felt like a piece of shit, for
Yeah.
doing that to
Yeah.
her.
Well, thankfully she came out on the winning side, the healthy side.
Absolutely, it was
And
amazing to see the first time. It was at her baby shower, and she went back for seconds, and I
Mm.
went. I mean, I almost
yes.
cried. I seriously almost cried. I was like, "Oh my God, my sis is going to be okay."
Mm.
And like any, issue, like addiction, like anything, it's not like she was cured. She's
Yeah.
had to fight and had to continue to work and fight against that at different times in her life. But she came out the other side and has been a voice for eating
Right.
disorders for young women and young men. So,
Yeah. I remember her being very sweet, and I felt because we worked together. We played brother and sister once, and she um when it came out publicly about this condition, this eating disorder and everything, and I think there were some photos. You know, the tabloids are horrible,
mhm.
and God, it just you know,
Oh yeah, just rips you up.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you mentioned Kirk, and so he did kind of he grew and changed as we all do. We evolve
Mhm.
and stuff in our personalities and our beliefs and whatnot. And he admitted during at some point, I believe he admitted to being difficult um,
Mhm.
at times to work with. What's
In
your relationship like with him? What was your experience with that?
um, Kirk and I were always close. I mean, he
Mhm.
was like an older brother to me. I was one of the few, because I was raised, my mom raised me in the Mormon church when I was young. My dad
Oh,
was a big part of the born again, the Jesus Revolution with Chuck
mm,
Smith and all that in Santa Ana.
hmm,
So I was involved in church, and at least a Christian based church, through most of my
hmm,
life. So when Kirk did find his faith and really go overboard with it at first, and again, he said that's not my words.
hmm,
um he cut everybody who didn't believe as he believed out of his life. He thought that's what he had to do to be a good Christian. All his friends who were Jewish, all his friends who were non-believers, all his friends, he cut everybody out of his life and
wow,
stopped talking to him, and he thought that's what he had to do, and he knows that was not the way to go about it and not the way to
right,
be a good
right,
Christian and everything else, but he knows that now. So it was hard having him pull away from us like that. I was the
yeah,
only one on set that he didn't pull away 100%. And I think it was because we still had similar beliefs of faith.
Mhm.
But he took it so far that he honestly believed that we were too risque, that our show was too risque.
Yeah, you had your own things, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, if
Mhm.
if you don't, because I was reading, I couldn't believe that someone was stalking you during that time. So just
Well,
how terrifying was that? And did the show do anything to take precautions?
first of all, my stalker issue was kept away from me for a very long time. I had family members who read the majority of my fan mail for me, went through it at least,
Mm-hmm.
and filtered out anything that was inappropriate, made sure I got all the letters I needed to respond to. And these letters had been coming in for a while, and I was never made aware. I mean, given I'm only
Wow.
10, 11 years old, um, it was not the type of stuff I should have been made aware of at that point. But around 13, the letters started increasing in frequency and also in violence and
Mm.
the things that he would put down in paper. And all of a sudden, one day I showed up on set and I've got two guys in black leather trench coats following me around the lot.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I mean, they're, 20 feet back or whatever and not talking to me, but they're tailing me. And I was not an oblivious kid. So, like, what the hell is going on here? So I went to my friend who was the head of Warner Brothers or the lot security at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, Dave, you got to tell me what's going on here. I'm not stupid. And he said, I cannot tell you specifics, but you're the high horse at the trough. It's about you.
Hmm.
And that's when I came to my parents and I said, you guys got to tell me what's going on here. And they explained that there was a gentleman who had taken a very sick fascination with me and was threatening all sorts of stuff. I mean, he wanted to rape me and kill me and strangle
Oh,
me and do it
Lord.
with his
Oh,
bare
wow.
hands and all that. I mean, very graphic detail in these letters and stuff. I don't know if it was him or not. I believe it was. He called in a death threat to one of the studios and said I was going to die that day. That was a very
Holy
interesting
hell.
day. I was in school that day, and I had fallen asleep in math class, and all of a sudden my buddy's elbowing me, and he's going, "Jim, wake up! It's Chappie!" And our chaplain is in the door,
Hmm.
calling for me. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I figure I'm in trouble for falling asleep in class or something. And I get up and he goes, your parents are on their way to pick you up. You got to come with me right now. Okay, can you tell me what's going on? I can't tell you what's going on. So I played on his heartstrings. I'm like, Chaplain, come on. It's me, Chappie. You got to tell me. I'm freaking out. What is going on? And he told me that someone had called in a death threat. So I was picked up in a unmarked car and was shuttled off to the airport, where I was put on a helicopter and flown to an unknown location where I spent the weekend with my father.
Oh,
So that was,
yeah.
I'm 13
I,
years old at
Yeah.
that point. It was pretty freaky. I know it was a struggle for them because they wanted to make me aware of possible danger, but I don't
uh-huh.
think they knew how to do that without completely terrifying me. And at the time, we certainly didn't. I mean, this is well before social media and camera phones and everything else. We didn't know what this guy looked like. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
these were handwritten letters,
I see.
that were mailed to us with a stamp and an envelope. So
Yeah.
it was a very different
Hmm.
time. We knew nothing about this guy. It
Yeah.
wasn't until he sent me a 33-page handwritten biography of himself. It was the first time he hadn't signed it with his pseudonyms. He had called himself Captain Sam and Oz. Those were his two pseudonyms that he would use.
Wow.
And this time he put his actual name and address at the top of the thing. And within 2 days, an FBI agent, as well as Gavin DeBecker, who was the head of Warner Brothers security at that
Mm-hmm.
time, were on his doorstep arresting him.
Huh.
So he went to prison, and like any good stalker, the day he got out, he called me.
Oh my gosh.
He left a message on my PR guy's message, letting me know that he's out and he's going to see me soon. So we turned that over to the FBI, and that was the last I ever heard about it.
Oh,
But
thank
it,
God.
it was
Oh, yeah.
intense. It was very
Wow.
intense.
We've had, people play the kids in the Brady Bunch on,
Mhm.
and they talked about the introducing of a new character at the end of the series. So they said that there was maybe a slight resentment. So how did you and the other, kids feel about like Leonardo DiCaprio comes in as a new character?
Mhm. Well, we had our first not new character, but new person in Ashley Johnson when they brought her on to play Chrissy as older,
Right.
when they aged Chrissy
Oh,
in
right.
between seasons. And that was awesome getting to have someone come in and be able to be more a part of the show. because before that we were working with actual babies. There's only so much you can write storyline wise around all of that. So that was great. Bringing Leo in at the end, I think I was really the only one with a little bit of resentment. And it wasn't towards Leo, it was towards ABC because they didn't believe in me enough to step into Kirk's shoes and carry that role. And they told me that. That's why they were bringing Leo in. And I was somebody who had always paid attention to the ratings and all the, you know, the analytics and stuff. And at that point in time, for about a year and a half, maybe a season and a half, my episodes were consistently the highest rated of the season every time. So I did not understand why they wouldn't back me and why they felt the need to bring someone else in. So yeah, I did have a little bit of resentment towards the network for that. Never resented Leo for it. I loved Leo. Him and I got along great on the set. It was great to have another kid around my age. It was nice to have somebody to pal around with and that I got along with. And I was actually there in the trailer with him. We were in the school trailer when he got the call that he had booked This Boy's Life, the De Niro film.
Gosh, he was good.
And he jumped into my arms. I mean, literally went horizontal in the air and is like in my arms going, I've got a De Niro film. Oh my God. And, you know, props to our producers because they released him from his contract.
When the show was coming to an end, were you ready to move on or you wanted to go longer?
I definitely wanted to go longer. We were right up until I think 3 weeks before we filmed the last episode, we didn't know if we were getting an 8th season or not. We had not heard yet. And the rumor was we were going to be doing an 8th season, but we had not gotten a confirmation. So no, I wasn't ready to be done with it yet. I really would have loved to do that 8th season at that time.
Right.
Looking back now, I'm glad we didn't. The 7th season is not really one that I am proud of. Our storylines were pretty poor. They were very recycled, you know, from other shows and other things. And I think all of our performances, we were kind of phoning it in a bit, every one of us. And we've all talked about it and we agree. So had we moved on to an 8th season, I don't think it would have gotten any better. So I think all of us are in agreement that it probably ended when it needed to. But at the time, it was a disappointment. Especially as a kid, I felt like I'm losing my family.
Sure.
You know?
I want to move on to Peanuts. You were Linus, right?
I was incredibly lucky to get the part of Linus. I was like all kids at that time. I was a huge Peanuts fan. I loved the comic strips. I loved the TV specials. I loved everything about it. And Linus was my favorite character. So I was just excited to get to go read for the part. And I don't know if I've ever told you this part, Moosie. It's the only job I ever got hired on the spot for.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went in and I read, you know, they put me in the sound booth, headphones, and did all the dialogue. And Lee Mendelson, who, along with Bill Melendez, was the head of Peanuts Television, he was there, and he came bursting in the door, and he said, "You sound the most like the original Linus I have ever heard. You're hired."
That's awesome.
And it was just, I mean, I was through the roof. I kept it together inside, but as soon as my mom and I got outside, I was like, I get to be Linus. I mean, I blew up. I was amazed. One of our Charlie Browns, when I was doing it, was actually Chad Allen from Our House, the Wilford Brimley show.
Okay.
And he was the first Charlie Brown that I got to work with. And then they replaced him before we did the Snoopy musical special and brought in, I think, a new Lucy as well. But I got to work with Amy Foster from Punky Brewster, who I'd worked with before on the show. She was our Sally. So we had a fun crew, and it was, I guess we knew because it's voiceover work that parts were going to constantly change. You know, whether it was somebody had a conflict or somebody's voice wasn't right anymore. So it was unique, but it was really only unique in that we saw each other there. Doing Peanuts, I don't know if it's like this with all animation because I only did Peanuts and one
Mhm.
other, but we were never in the booth with each other. We didn't feed off of each other.
Hmm.
You did not do your lines with
Yeah.
another person. You were solo in the booth giving them their read. The only
I would,
time we saw the other
yeah.
actors was when we were back in the waiting room doing school together or just waiting for our turn.
Yeah.
So it didn't throw the chemistry off bringing somebody new in because you weren't actually working off of them. You weren't actually interacting with them in the performance.
When I was doing a
But,
Hanna-Barbera show, we all were looking, we were like in a kind of a circle with our microphones and our stand so we can actually make eye contact and talk
uh,
to each other.
That's
And I
cool.
I
think
would
that's
have
the way to
loved that.
go.
I agree as well. I mean, not that I mean the results speak for themselves. Peanuts has always been Peanuts. They get
Mhm.
exactly what they want out of it. But
Right.
as an actor, as a performer, I'm with you, Moosie.
Yeah.
I feed off of others. That's my acting style. It's the listen and respond thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel that my performance excels and is better is when I can do that. So
Yeah.
I definitely prefer working with other actors and actresses, somebody else to perform with and off of.
Yeah, I guess I have to ask about this. You know, you were in something that was like loved in my house, the Shalom Sesame. So
Ah,
I have to, how'd that come about?
Right.
Because, you know, them asking this Mormon kid that you basically said. So how'd that come about that they got to you? And I also want to know, is it tough to work like with Muppets because you have to focus on the I guess the hand instead of the performers underneath?
actually, it was the working with the puppets and the puppeteers was amazing, and they are so engaging with their puppetry work and their voices. You don't even think about the guy running the puppet. You really are interacting with the puppet, and it's very cool to do. I actually got it. They just reached out. Sesame Street was putting together these tapes, these special tapes that they were going to market of all the different Sesame Streets
Right.
across the world. So they had a European one, and they had the Israel one, and they had I think they did like five different sets, and they just asked a different actor to do each one.
Hmm.
I don't know why they chose me for the Israel one, but it was amazing, and it was so cool to see the unique characters that they had. You know, instead of Big Bird, it was Kippy Ben Capode, the porcupine. And instead of Oscar the Grouch, he was a brown grouch whose
Right.
name was Moishe Ufnik. You know, it was cool to get to see different characters that were more relatable to the area that they were in and being broadcast to, but those characters still having a lot of what I grew up with in my childhood. So that was a really fun experience. And then, as you saw, on top of that, I got to travel all over Israel
Right.
and see some of the most amazing. I mean, we went to Masada, and we
Oh,
went
I
to
love
the
that. I
Dead
love who you
Sea,
are.
and
Actually,
it was it was so cool as a kid. I mean, a
I'm actually
little.
on the tape here.
It
So,
was slightly unnerving in that we were there during it was right before the first Gulf War.
uh-huh.
Mm.
So we did have a few Scud missile warnings while we were in, Jerusalem, and um, walking down the street. There was I mean, there's always a high military presence in Israel, but I mean, on every corner you had 4 or 5 soldiers, all armed to the teeth.
Right.
And a lot more casual than the soldiers I was used to seeing. I mean, some of them are just like kind of swinging the gun on their arm casually. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a little uncomfortable,
Oh,
but I'm glad they asked me. We had a wonderful time. The people who have had the privilege of seeing it or had the tapes when they were young seem to really connect with it and love it. I get people all the time, even today, 25, 30 years later, who, oh man, I grew up with those. Those were some of my favorite Sesame Street tapes.
the
Uh,
same to my kids as well. Yes.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I love that. Just getting to be a part of, again, something
Yeah.
so iconic like Sesame Street is just a blessing for me.
Hmm.
That's so cool. Hey, so before we let you go and give you your
Mhm.
life back, you're a celebrity chef.
Yes,
And
sir.
how did it come about? What do you do? What's going on right now with that?
Grew up cooking with grandma, basically. My
Mhm.
grandmother was a self-trained chef. She would 3 times a year for New Year's, for Thanksgiving, and for Easter, she would open up her home to our neighborhood and she would cook just for days, and I would help her. And anybody who didn't have somewhere to be on the holiday, anybody in our little town could come to my grandma's. And that went for the homeless population in our little area. That went for just anybody. I mean, whether they knew my grandparents or not, you were welcome there. And that is where I got my love of cooking from, was from my grandmother, and using that as a way to show your love for others. So she opened a restaurant when I was 10 years old or 11 years old. And on the summers, when I had a hiatus from growing pains, I would go up and work in the restaurant with her. I had always loved cooking, so I said, I'm going to culinary school. And I did, and I again just absolutely loved it. It's the only time I've ever enjoyed school. I, ADD and everything else, I was not a school guy. I mean, I got decent grades and stuff, but I always hated school. So it's the first time I really enjoyed being in school. Culinary math, I was first math class I ever enjoyed. And I loved it. So I went into catering. I opened my own catering company for a while, was getting very successful for a while until the crash of 2008, and pretty much lost all my clients because nobody had any spare money to do, frivolous things. And it dried up basically. So I started transitioning out of doing my own catering, and I freelanced for a bunch of different companies as a head chef. And now I teach private cooking parties, private cooking classes. My favorite thing to do right now is we do these cooking parties, and they're for between 6 and 12 people. And basically, I come to either someone's house, or I have a rental kitchen that we can use, and I let them pick a theme or a style or a type of ethnic cuisine that they want to learn. And I customize a menu for them, give everybody tasting portions of everything so they get to try and taste everything. Everybody gets a full meal by the end of the night. And it's just a really good time. It's like a 4-hour class. I teach 4 to 5 different dishes, and people just sit back, if they want to sit back with a glass of wine or whatever and just enjoy, they can. They can get up and be more hands-on with me. But again, I like teaching, and I like sharing my passion for cooking with others. So it's a really fun thing we do. Actually, shameless plug. If anybody wants to know more about it or wants to contact me about it, you can go to my website, jeremyjamesmiller.com. And we've got links on there where you can contact us about the cooking classes. For me, it's giving your all to cook food for someone, to nourish them, to take care of them like that. It is really, it's kind of my love language. I love getting to do that for people.
Just looking back at Growing Pains, at your time on the series, what's the first thing that comes to your mind whenever you just think back to those days?
Blessed. It was such an ideal time to be a part of that show and the business. I honestly believe I had it better than 90% of the child stars out there. I had a great cast, a great crew. We were incredibly protected. We were loved. We were looked after. We were guided. We were mentored, and we were there at a time where we still had a bit of our own privacy. There were no cell phones. I did so many crazy things. If there were cell phones out there, I mean, I'd been canceled 27 times already. It's
hard to get canceled with a pager. Yeah.
That's what I mean. We lived in a very different time where we still, given as much of an invasion of privacy as there would be a lot of times from fans or from whatever else, we still had a piece of our own privacy. It wasn't like it is now, where every aspect of your life is being picked over and made public every moment of the day. So I just feel blessed that I was a part of it at the time that I was, and that I had such an amazing experience.
Hey, man, I'm so happy you did this. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Honestly, I'm glad we finally got it to work. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Man.
Well, how can people follow? You mentioned your website. Do you have any other media accounts that people can follow you at?
On Instagram, it's The Real Jeremy James Miller. And on Facebook, it's Mr. Jeremy James Miller. You can follow me on those. And you can also find the links for those on the website. So jeremyjamesmiller.com. Oh, also, one of the things we're doing is really kind of strange. We're just trying it out. Wanted to see if the fans like it. On the website, I'm actually offering a 5-minute Zoom call just to chat. And, if someone wants to get to know me a little better or ask questions about the show or whatever, yeah, I'm offering a 5-minute Zoom call they can book with me, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if the fans like it and if it's something that I can make work and keep going for them.
Awesome. My love to Joni. And
let's wrap this for official.
All right, buddy.
So again,
Go
this
ahead
has
and
been
sign us off,
yes,
Jonathan.
this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier, and again, a very special thanks to Jeremy Miller. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.